The House Education Committee will come to order. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Chair Colazar.
Here.
Representatives Churches.
Present.
Shannon.
Present.
Stone.
Here.
Weiss. Glanville.
Present.
Conlon.
Present.
Edwards.
Here.
Wagilla.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Markkinen.
Here.
Paquette.
Here.
Wenzel. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Representative Stone moves to approve the minutes of the September 12th meeting without objection, so ordered. And today we'll be taking testimony only on House Bills 4241 and 4242, which deals with panic alarm requirements for schools and providing funding. So with that, Representative Carter, if you want to come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm here to bring two bills before you. House Bill 4241 and House Bill 4242 would require and provide funding, respectively, for at least one panic alarm to be installed in each school district across the state. We've asked for $6.7 million to accomplish installing at least one panic alarm in each school. I introduced this legislation as a tool to improve safety overall in our schools. These pieces of legislation are important for the well-being of our students and our school system. A panic alarm installed in schools will do two things. First, it will create a direct and discreet line of communication to local law enforcement, designated first responders, and police and safety units to alert for a non-fire evacuations, lockdowns, or any active shooting. And secondly, it also creates a direct notification for the designated law enforcement entity. The panic alarm system in each school can help save precious seconds and quite possibly save lives in an emergency situation, including an active shooting. According to the most recent report from the National Center for Educational Statistics, the number of school shootings increased for the second year in a row last year. There were 188 school shootings with casualties reported in the 2021-2022 school year at public and private elementaries and secondary schools per the annual report, which centers on crime and safety. This is up by 93 incidents from the previous year, 2020-2021 school year. I applaud the work we've done already, often on bipartisan basis, to make our schools safe. This required panic alarm would be one more tool that puts the safety of our students first. I welcome and appreciate your support on House Bill 4241 and 4242. Thank you. Appreciate this time to address the committee.
Thank you. Got a couple questions. First of all, I want to ask, I know there have been some concerns from the Michigan Community Directors Association, or 911, along with the Michigan Sheriffs. Are you willing to work with them to basically amend the bill as needed if they have some corrections that they are concerned about?
100%. The goal is to protect our children, and we must work with our first responders and our police. So I've already had dialogue with both entities, and I'm more than willing to work with them.
All right, thank you very much. Representative Green.
Thank you, Representative Carter. So will it include non-public schools? I didn't see that in the bill.
And when it was crafted, we had the goal of all schools included. Children are children. It doesn't matter where they go to school. So the bill will be reflective of all schools, not just public and charter.
So will we, you'll put in a sub then to include that?
Okay, Jonathan, you want to answer that?
Absolutely. We are looking at making sure that it's clear that it would be all charter, public, and private schools.
Fantastic, thank you.
And then, of course, reflecting if needed additional funding.
Thank you. Representative Weiss.
you. And thank you, Representative Carter. I know in the budget we had approved funding for schools for both school safety and also student mental health. Can you explain why the kind of sort of the purpose of this bill beyond that piece? Because my understanding is that districts could use some of that funding currently to be able to install these panic alarms if they don't already have them.
Excuse me, Representative Weiss, I didn't hear the second part of your question, but I think I've got the gist of what you were saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong. The purpose of the bills is to protect you. Oh, go ahead. I'm listening.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, and I'm sorry that the audio is not good. Just since we have funding in the budget for school safety, can you kind of talk about the purpose of this legislation beyond the funding that's already available?
Yes. What we're trying to do is ensure that we keep all our children safe. And we have this motto more to say time is safety and it saves lives. So by creating these buttons and making these accessible at our school, I believe that it will help us avoid situations that we've already encountered. As far as what we already have in the budget is wonderful. It's addressing a lot of our needs, but this is specific to keeping our children safe. It's a specific tool that we're adding to the resources to help keep our young people safe.
Okay, thank you. Representative Markkinen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here this morning, Rep. Carter. These two bills, are they designed just for urban areas?
Absolutely not. You know, my passion for children started from Ishpeming, Nagani, and I'll tell that story a million times.
There's more to the UP than just Ishpeming and Nagani.
And Houghton. Okay.
Yeah, we have to go all the way over to Ironwood.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I want to make it very clear that this bill is for all children, no matter where they reside.
So the reason I say that is because some of these school districts are at least a half hour or longer away from law enforcement.
Yes.
I know that's really hard to believe.
No, it's
but,
not. Like I said, Rep. Markkinen, I had the privilege and honor to visiting the Marquette ISD. And I learned from being up in Marquette how far the school districts are from each other. So yes, we have taken that into consideration.
So my idea for this is not only that alarm respond to the local sheriff's department, but MSP as well, because the local sheriff's department only has like 5 or 6 deputies.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah,
Rep. Markkinen, and we're pleased to say that we have MSP on board with us, working with us as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Representative Conlon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Carter, for this important legislation. Do we feel that this will give some false sense of security? That's the only thing I worry about, because we do know that when something like this happens tragically in a school, those teachers are trying to shelter in place. I'm not even sure it's a good idea for them to try to get word out to hit the panic button when you're just trying to stay so quiet. So I guess I wonder if this will really help in the end, given what we know about training and being quiet in these circumstances. And unless we could have one in every single schoolroom, which would be fantastic, but that's not going to happen financially. So I guess I just would like you to speak a little to that.
Thank you for that question, Rep. Conlon. And it is what I'm understanding what's going to happen is the teachers are going to be given the opportunity to be properly trained in the usage of this panic button to divert some of the chaos that could possibly happen in God forbid, unforeseen circumstances if this becomes something that happens. You want to add on that, Jonathan?
Thank you, Representative. The other part I would add is it's not just going to be a physical button. So if a teacher, for example, is sheltering with their students in the classroom, and the school district selects, they can have either on the phone or computer an option for the button as well. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't just like confined to with the main office, for example, and we were talking with stakeholders when drafting the legislation, that a virtual option is very important. So we wanted to make sure that it was as easily accessed by staff as possible.
Just to finish, would we be recommending which device? Because we had some school safety hearings last week where you find out there's so many of these devices on the market. And there's, people who want to make money off of this. So would we be telling them which device we would recommend that they purchase?
Currently in the legislation, it does not specify which one they would be required to purchase. If that's something that the committee would like to look into, we certainly could do that.
I mean, my understanding is while the state is funding it, it's up to the schools to do what best fits their needs, correct? Okay, thank you.
Coming from the school education group, definitely local control is important.
Thank you. Representative Glanville.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Representative Carter, for this legislation. And I do appreciate the intent. One question I have a couple, but in particular, how does this align with the school safety package that we're currently working on? So, and this kind of goes to what Rep. Conlon was talking about as well. There is a bill in the package, it's my bill, but what it stipulates is that there will be a uniform process for reporting and responding to issues in schools, emergencies in schools. This is because, as families move from school to school, or as teachers do, or as law enforcement are responding, and many times there might be a municipality that responds to 2 or 3 different school districts, to have this kind of continuity across the system of what the expectations are for response and things like that. So coming back to this idea, of this panic alarm, how does this fit with some of the other work we're doing in school safety is my first question, and then I have another.
I'm going to allow Jonathan to answer the technical part of that.
I'd say it's a lovely supplement. So the goal of this legislation is to just help make schools safer. We don't want a system where some schools have a panic alarm, some schools don't. And so we just want to make sure that by requiring one in each building, that all schools have that same opportunity. And in terms of the package that's being worked on, we think they go together nicely to help address the terrible problem we have in this country and state with school safety.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of my concern too. Like I said, I love this idea, but also I know that having worked in the administrative level in schools, there tends to be people tend to say, well, I think this is the best idea. And so that's why we have the panel that gave us our recommendations. And I just want to make sure that in this case, this is the best idea. This is a recommended best practice. This is something that is on that slate, because while it sounds fantastic, there could be some very hidden pieces. So I understand in talking to my fire chief, for example, there are already issues with how schools communicate to fire and police. Like, they don't have the same route to get information to them, and that's something we need to square up just for fires, right? The amount of technology a building may or may not have would also, impact whether or not a school could participate in this kind of program. So I think, I feel like the devil's in the details, and I haven't seen the details, so maybe some of that's worked out. But I just want to bring that to the attention too, and when we respond to what we think are like the best ideas, because it does sound easy, and yes, it reads, the concept of a panic alarm in this situation, like I said, it sounds fantastic, but it's in the implementation, and it's in how it aligns with the recommendations we've gotten, and what the priorities are for implementing those that I think we need to take into consideration. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that as we move forward.
And thank you for what the questions that you asked. And one of the things when we looked into, and of course everybody hopefully know that this is Alyssa's law. Okay, when we started looking into this, we looked at model legislation in Ohio, New York, New Jersey, Tennessee, just past Texas. So it's across the board, and there's about at least 6 other states, including Michigan. I'm proud to say Michigan is listed on the web now as a state that could potentially implement this life-saving tool, okay? So as we work through this, and this is one of the things, the great possibilities that we have, working with the school systems, working with the labor unions, working with the police, working with the 911 and first responders, we could craft something that works for everybody. This is what they did in the states that have passed this into law. They saw the value of this tool, this resource, in saving lives, starting right there or originating right there in Florida. So this is something to consider. We do not have everything to present to you right now because this is a work in progress. But just keep in mind the long-term goal of what we're trying to achieve, and that is to avoid situations like Oxford or MSU or Bath, and I can go on and on. I'm not saying this is the answer to everything, but it's an answer.
Sorry, you just said MSU. Is this going to require universities as well to implement
that's
this
a good
technology?
point. When we crafted the legislation, and once again, everyone, this is a work in progress, okay? When we crafted the legislation, we designated schools, okay? Universities and colleges are schools, okay? And one of the things we can consider is no, I'm not sure if we want to do that at this point. But yes, we will look into considering the universities and our colleges.
Thank you.
Representative Green.
Thank you. My question piggybacks off of Rep. Granville's on what is the mechanics for then distributing the funds? Do we just automatically send money to every single school in the state of Michigan?
In my understanding, it would be creating like a pot of money available at the state that the schools would then basically apply to and then get reimbursed. That's my understanding.
So if they ran out of money, would then some schools not be able to get that funding but still be mandated to have the alarm?
Right. So when it came to the pot of money, we made sure that it was very, very full because that was a concern. We wanted to make sure we weren't running into issues with Prop A and Headley, where you're requiring a school to do something and not paying for it. So we wanted to make sure that we took an estimate of about $1,000 per installation times every school in the state, and then we doubled that number, if I remember correctly. So the amount of money in the fund is calculated to be more than enough for every school to install an button.
How many schools are in the state of Michigan?
I believe we're looking at 886.
That's all the elementaries, middle schools, high schools?
We had that number here.
I believe so.
No,
Is that
those are
districts?
the districts. So, because like Utica Community Schools has like 100 schools within its
Right.
district.
I would have to defer to MDE on how many, but the calculations for the fund were done with the House Fiscal Agency and
And we're done per school districts or per
per
schools?
school.
Okay.
And the number we have, at least the latest data, as of 2021, 886 public schools.
The districts or?
Public schools. And then there's 56 ISDs and 239 public school academies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was the number I was looking in these notes.
Representative Wagella.
Hi, thank you for coming here today. I just wanted to ask a clarifying set of questions. The first one was my reading of the bill was understanding that districts would just be required to have just one panic alarm. And the reason I'm asking that is I imagine that the cost goes up astronomically if schools opt to do something different. I think one of the groups we had last week, I looked up the cost of their program, and it was like $1.8 million for their whole district. So that's my question. And then the backup is estimated cost of an office panic alarm. I think when I worked at Jimmy John's in college, and we had a panic alarm in case anything happened. So I imagine that cost can't be too high if it's just in the office, but I'm just looking for clarity.
Okay. What I understood is that the panic alarms would range from 1,000 to as much as 10,000. Jonathan, did you have more clarity on that?
The original estimate was 1,000 per installation because there's the, if it is a physical button, for example, you got to purchase the button itself, but also the connection between emergency services and the button itself and servicing that point A to point B. So we went with an estimate of $1,000 per school building, and then we added money on top of that to make sure that the money would not simply run out.
If I may, Chair, I think I'm good. Thank you for that. I something I would like to see. I know this is still a work in progress. I think limiting making it as clear as possible that we're only expecting one panic alarm, which I know that's in the bill, but I want to make sure districts don't think there's enough funding. I'm sure they will figure that out for something bigger. And then I'm kind of unclear with this part, but I personally don't know if I believe public funds should be going to private schools. That's something I think we should talk a little bit more about. I don't know if the bill says that right now, but something I just want to clarify.
Okay, thank you for that.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. I love the sentiment, of course, and the whole attitude in trying to keep our kids safe, including as many as possible. And I used to work in a bank many years ago, and we each had a panic button, but we stayed at our station, and it was easy to see that, someone comes to your window and the panic button's underneath, et cetera. You could pull a certain bill out, and it would set off an alarm. And it makes sense. With unlimited funds, it would make sense to have a panic button in every room. I don't know how hackable it is into someone's phone, et cetera. I don't understand all that technology, but I'm sure that's a consideration. Unlimited funds, we can do everything in every room, and everybody's got access to help. Unlimited funds, I wonder if it might be better to give each school the funds for safety and let them decide whether it's better spent on panic buttons, technology, or another security officer. The other thought there is when, the MSU shooting, for our most recent example, and many others, it takes law enforcement at least 10 minutes to get there, and sometimes 20, 30 minutes. As Rep. Markinen stated, in the rural areas, it's going to take a lot longer. To have somebody on site may be a better use of funds for some schools, and I would love to see the discussion. I don't know what the end result needs to be, but at least the discussion about giving the schools the funding, and then they have the ability to decide what's best for their school. Is it another security officer right there so they don't have to wait for law enforcement, which is, we all know that a lot of times everything's done by the time they get there. I mean, that's what's sad. We need security and processes and answers right there on site. But is there some type of way we might be able to have a discussion that the money can stay with the school and they decide whether they get more technology and panic buttons or they get another security officer or something else? Thanks.
Thank you, Rep. Johnson. And that's something that we looked into as far as some of the money. Rep. Weiss has mentioned money is going into school safety. This is not an isolated resource here. And schools are able at this point to allocate the money and the funding that is being provided for them to, if they opt to get an extra security officer or any other additional resource, they can do that in this current state. This is additional tool to what we're talking about. And you mentioned something that is very important to me personally, because I remember watching over and over again what happened in Uvalde, Texas. Okay, and there were resource people around, and there were sheriffs around, and there was a whole bunch of people around, and the technology that's being currently used was there, but yet and still 19 children and 2 teachers perished that day. So what I'm saying is this is an additional tool, an additional resource that may be able to help schools if they have an unforeseeable incident like that. So the details of this law can be worked out. We can bring the people to the table. And giving local control is very important because they can tell us what they want, But our goal here, I feel our goal here is doing everything we can to keep our children safe, regardless to where they live, what they do. Keep them safe. You shouldn't have to be a child worried about whether or not you're going to come home from school.
Thank you. And because I get hung up on details, I just want to take a second here. As I sat here and thought 886 can't be possible when I have Wayne County, which has way, way more. And we have 83 counties across the state. The actual number of public schools of Warner is about 2,870 buildings, 375 charter buildings, and 118 ISDs. My apologies. Getting hung up in the details over here. Representative Stone.
And Mr. Chair, clarify that. Jonathan, is that the figure that we used to come up with the $6.7 million appropriation? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And thank you, Rep. Carter, for bringing us an idea on how we can better coordinate between schools and local law enforcement. I think you started to touch on this in response to Rep. Glanville, but if you can talk a little bit more about communities, states that already implement similar legislation, and or do we have data yet on if this is improving response times?
And thank you for that, Representative Stone, because it was the encouragement that I got from other states like Texas, that brought you Uvalde, or New York, and you could tell that they're completely different. Florida, where all of this is originating from. And it's across the board that other states are recognizing that this is a valuable tool in addition to what they're currently using. Now, as far as the logistics and statistics of whether or not this is a yay or nay, hopefully we don't have to find out, hopefully we won't have to have another shooting to prove whether or not this is an effective tool. But God forbid if we do, then we'll have a benchmark. It paralyzes me to think, and this is personal again, that a child has to worry about this. All I had to worry about going to school was a bottle of warm milk, okay? This is just another tool in addition, and I would be more than glad to present to this committee every bit of information that I find from the 5 or 6 states that's passed this into law, and the 6 or 7 states that has it on their books. Obviously, there's a movement there. States see this as a valuable tool in addition to what they're currently using. And I'm proud to say Michigan is in that rank too. At least we're listening to the idea. At least we're entertaining it. And I thank you for that. I thank you for the opportunity to have this hearing.
Representative Churches.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the intent of this bill as well. I just am looking to understand a little bit more, kind of what Rep. Stone said of, is this a need based on data that we have, and is it producing outcomes? I'm concerned that school districts will get into a business partnership with an entity that is trying to sell a service of safety, and the costs will increase over time. I mean, it's just like anything else, like Netflix, and it got more expensive every year, and then they started making it harder. You could share passwords, all of these things. Is this, I want to protect our school districts from that, because what if it's going to be more expensive each year and there's more services offered? And I worry that this might not be a service that every single school thinks is necessary for their students and their buildings. I know that the school district, in my previous experience, we worked exclusively with the police department, and we had our own plan. And sometimes when you have a plan and then someone tells you something else, then now you're doing 2 plans and you're melding that together. So do you have, and there's also one more thing. It says that this is for fire, lockdowns, and active shooters. Is there training and education to make sure that this alarm isn't used for students who are experiencing large emotions to call law enforcement for help? Those are just some of the ideas and questions that I want to learn more about. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Representative Churches. And those are very good questions. And I keep saying this is a work in progress. One of the things that we will do is begin that deep dive analysis on the comparative between the states. My first assumption is we haven't had another mass shooting in Texas or another one in Florida, so we don't have benchmarks. But we should have some data to see whether or not the incidents have decreased. And we all should be able to talk to local education associations in other states to see that is utilizing this service to see if it's a valuable tool. These are some of the things that we're taking in consideration. Please keep in mind that we're not saying this is something that we're not going to vet. We're going to make sure that it works for our Michigan school system, and most importantly for our children. Now, the technical part that you were asking, I'm going to defer to Jonathan.
I would like to start on the security piece of it. So right now, you're right that the clarification there is not in the bill. Certainly, if we would like to review that, we can. Additional training would come with additional funding. So with this bill and Headley and Prop A here in the state, we can't require a school to do anything if we're not going to pay for it. Also addressing some of those legacy costs you were mentioning. It would be the responsibility of the legislature then to ensure that as these schools are incurring some of these legacy costs, that there is funding to make sure that the requirement is paid for. As for the training component, currently it's not in the bill. It is specifying a school security emergency. So theoretically, if the school was thinking that there was a severe threat to the school itself, the staff or students, they would be justified in using the button.
That's my concern solely lies. I have been in situations in more than one instance where law enforcement has been called in response to children experiencing large emotions, and that is a moment in time that children don't forget. And I often think that is where our investment in mental health services is paramount.
Once again, Representative Churches, this is a resource in addition to what we're doing right now, okay? And between now and hopefully in the future, working with our stakeholders, we're open to amendments. We're open to a lot of things to help bring something to the table that you will see value in. And once again, the biggest value that you could see is other states who have implemented this law and implemented it successfully. And that is our goal, to bring that information to you.
Representative Glanville.
Thank you, Chair. And actually, I wanted to follow up on your question. In addition to, I've heard two different terms here: schools. Well, three: schools, school districts, and school buildings. And I want to just point out, in addition to the numbers that Chair Colazar raised around schools, there are, I'm thinking of my ISD in particular, and I know this applies to many other schools, but there are probably 10 buildings on their campus. So I'm wondering, how do we handle building campuses with multiple buildings? Because a central alarm is probably not going to do the trick. We would need one in each building, I would think, if this is to follow the intent of the bill. So I just want to raise that as a numbers issue. And then can you talk a little bit about how this system is better than calling 911?
You want to? I was formulating in my mind that I'll respond after Jonathan.
I like to make notes. So in terms of the number of buildings, for a school district that has multiple, it might be, or not necessarily the school district, but like a school campus with multiple buildings, they might find the virtual option is best. Because if someone has it on their computer, someone has it on their phone, they've met the requirement. As for the second part of your question, could you repeat that for me?
Just wondering how this system is better than calling 911.
It's all about timing. So if you're calling 911, there's a timing component. There's also a verbal component to it. So with the button, it's a silent alarm. There's no indication on where you are as a person. You can activate it from a closet, from a classroom. There's no sound to it.
So, but law enforcement would know where you're located.
Depending, I would have to defer to whatever system is purchased by the school on the positioning.
Okay. All right.
And of course, the system that's set up between the school district and law enforcement.
Okay, and my comment in addition to that is that this is not a one-upper. You know, we hope to work with the 911 resources and first responders to make sure that we coordinate. That's one of the suggestions that were actually brought to us already about working with 911. It's not a replacement.
Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rep. Carter, for bringing forth an idea that's outside of the typical metal detectors and the security system that children are now forced to go through. That is also traumatic. Also, I kind of like this idea, but for the life of me, I keep picturing it as a fire alarm. Is it similar to that, where the panic button would also just notify the police department as opposed to the fire system, and the kids can get training like we did with Stop, Drop, and Roll, and all those things of that nature? Like, maybe I'm picturing it too small, but that's how I'm picturing it. Okay.
Now, would you like to differentiate between the two?
I don't foresee it being like a fire alarm, where once it's going off, there's like the flashing lights and the alarm that everyone sees. Now, the nice thing about the bill is that we are leaving it to the school districts to decide what product they wish to purchase. So if that's kind of where they want to go with it, I suppose they could. Although with it currently, the like the thought process is a silent alarm from a phone, computer, or the main office building, or wherever they want if they want a physical button, wherever they want that located.
And I want to expound on that as well, because you brought up a very important point. Maybe some of us live in school districts where we don't have to go through metal detectors, or we don't have to go through the shakedown of a security officer. If you live in a district like that, that's really great. I understand, I appreciate that. But there's a lot of school districts that do have metal detectors. They do have security guards, and it is traumatizing to the young people. It's just a reminder. Maybe it's a physical reminder that they could possibly be in danger. And I'm not saying replace this, but I'm saying as an addition to. And I think that's what we need to remember here. This is what I see as a vital, critical tool to keeping children safe. We're not getting rid of 911. We're not replacing the state police. We're not even replacing the security officer with the baton. We're helping our kids.
Thank you. And no other questions, just some cards to read in quickly. Thank you very much. Not wishing to speak, opposing the bill as written, Angela Elsey from Michigan Communications Directors Association, 911. Not wishing to speak, opposing the bill, Matt Saxton, Michigan Sheriff's Association. I said opposing. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Jennifer Smith, Michigan Association of School Boards. And there being no absent members, so no need for that. And there being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.